With that being said, we have some sad news. We are no longer the owners of a Volvo C30. Chad has waved moose goodbye to the C30. In fact, he literally doesn't have the car anymore.
Nope.
So,
And I replaced it with a pull-on basket case. You guys are gonna love
yes,
love that content.
As a temporary fix.
Yes.
So the whole point is the C30 hasn't been done. Nothing's been done to it in a long time. Chad's super focused on the Mustang. The C30 is sort of an afterthought car. We didn't want to do it a disservice to both the channel and the car itself to just let it keep sitting there. So from a business standpoint, we thought it was the best case scenario just to kind of let it go. And that's sort of where we are right now. So we do not have a C30 anymore on the channel. Chad is no longer the owner of it, and I have come up with some wonderful questions as to why this is happening. Let's start by talking about the car as it was. So what would you say is the best memory you had with the C30 overall?
This is kind of twofold. So one of the actual Greg, please tell Chad, how dare you?
Chad, how dare you?
So believe it or not, with all the mods, which were plenty, and everything, that I have two memories that sort of stick out. And the first one is when we went to the Tail of the Dragon and just getting to meet, I don't even know how many people were there. It was a lot. I went back and watched our Tail of the Dragon highlight video, and the amount of cars that were there was staggering. And while this isn't the best part of that, one of the cooler things about it was going there and just having multiple people come up to me and just being like, yo man, I watch your stuff, I love it, what do you think about this, what do you think about that, what are you doing next, this is awesome, blah blah blah. Prior to the C30, I had the IS300, and nobody was really doing anything with that on YouTube. So I kind of felt where they were coming from somebody's doing something with my car, that's so cool, this is awesome. And having just a ton of people come up to me and tell me that was cooler than anything I ever did with the car itself. From driving it, from doing all of this, that was so cool because I never thought I would be a, quote, YouTuber or a content creator or any of that sort of stuff. And then when we started doing this, we started shifting lanes as a website, then we moved into YouTube, but all of that stuff was it was driven by the business side of it. When the website stopped becoming profitable, YouTube was a thing where we could grow organically. We didn't have to reinvest in growing a community and things like that. And then Greg drops the V70R, and we start to become something, the guys with the Volvo and stuff. And then we added the C30, and it was a second thing. And then it started to really take off and gain traction and things like that. And one of the tricks to doing this stuff is to talk to the camera like it's a person, but I never thought of anyone beyond that point. So actually being able to be in a setting where quote unquote fans or people who were enjoying what I was doing, and not just a couple people, hundreds of thousands of people, was really, really cool. Then there was the actual act of driving on the Dragon itself, which was awesome. The C30 is really one of the perfect platforms for that. But more than the driving, it was the sitting around the campfire, watching everybody hang out in a community of people who, okay, so we all drove the same car or the same make of car, or at some point had that car. Just hanging out, meeting new people, meeting great new people that were to that point were faces on Facebook or a chat or a text or any of that sort of stuff. And just, that was one of the coolest things I ever did with that car. The second thing is kind of broken up over a few. Really two videos that we filmed. There was the who could set the fastest quarter mile, which is one of our best project car videos we've ever did. That sort of thing where it was me, Greg, Hanson, the three of us hanging out, doing stuff with cars. The reason we all got into cars, our friendship was founded upon Hanson's Evo. and us being like, "Ooh, what is this?" Like,
Pretty much, yeah.
we started talking car, and that's how we all became friends. And then shifting lanes, we obviously talk every day, but we, believe it or not, we don't actually see each other in person all that often. So being able to hang out, do things, have fun in cars in a pretty controlled environment that was, relatively, safe given the cars we had and stuff, and the banter. Like, I love the banter. Greg will tell you I'm a ball buster. I love, the trash talk, the going back and forth.
You don't say.
I know, like, shut up, Greg. To do that was a lot of fun, and like, and the other thing you may or may not know about me is I'm a pretty competitive SOB. So I want to win at this stuff. So like the competition element of it, that like hanging out around our cars was just really cool. And then lastly, when we did, I don't even remember the video, but when you actually drove the C30, Greg, that's the cool stuff. So obviously I'm looking forward to driving the Mustang when it has all the power and stuff like that. Like, duh. But what I'm looking forward to after that is seeing your reaction, seeing Hanson's reaction when you guys drive the car. It's one of those things where you have a concept in your head over a build. Everybody either just sits here and it's either they're plug and playing someone else's build just to get the end result, or they kind of they do things a certain way and so on and so forth. Like, I'm boosting the car in a slightly different way than is traditional. It's, we're putting a ton of power into it, so like that in and of itself, it makes it kind of unique, because a lot of these boosted Mustangs are in like the 600-ish wheel horsepower range. So like that sort of stuff, hanging out with the general crux of all of these things, and they fall under the same banner, which is hanging out with really good people, having fun, talking cars, and like the car kind of being the reason for it. And my biggest hope with the Mustang is that I'm able to entertain you guys as much as I did with the C30. I understand there's sort of, I don't want to say some people might feel betrayed by me selling it. I feel like you guys would be more betrayed if I just continue to let it sit and just go to nothing. The only reason I drove that car was it was too snowy for the Mustang, or the Mustang was getting work done. It became a glorified rental car. And I have too much respect for the people involved in the C30 community and the C30 as an engineering piece by itself to just let a car like that sit. So now it's in Texas. It's with its new owner. His brother has the exact same car in the exact same color. And it's it's
cool.
Like, that's really cool to me too, because like, he was a viewer. He watched. He knew everything about the car. He knew more about some of the videos than I did because I filmed them so long ago. So it's really cool that it went to a really good home. It went to someone who appreciates the car. It's someone who's going to use the car and then going to put their own personal spin and take on it. He's been sending me pictures of stuff. It's just really cool. Like I said, it's the memories with the people along the way that happen to be in that car that are like, I remember the fondest.
Exactly. I agree with that. I think that's a good way to sort of wrap that car up from like the best memory. What would you say is the worst memory from that car?
The boost leak.
I know the answer to this question.
The boost leak.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it replacing the one thing where you threw it across the garage.
Oh, I mean, taking the airlocks out sucked, but that only had to happen once. I had to dive into that. I don't even remember what it was, but it was a valve of some assortment. It wasn't like the CBV, which is effectively an on turbo or in the turbo area blow-off valve. It wasn't in the wastegate, even though like I was reaching down in there to get at the wastegate and everything like that.
Yeah.
Like the air intake pipe going into the turbo wasn't it was a pain. It wasn't a massive pain in the ass, but the fact that I had to do it like 79 million times is grating.
Yeah.
Because you have to put it, and then if you twist it, and then if you do it the wrong way, you score the aluminum, and which I did, and that's like nails on a chalkboard. So the fact that went on for forever before I could figure it out, the fact that we did a smoke down test with it, and I'll touch on this a little bit later on, but the fact that the shop I took it to, who's supposed to be Volvo guys, couldn't figure it out. We found out this whole boost leak thing because the car was on the dyno not making power. There's no worse feeling than being at the dyno, being excited to see what your mods did to the car, how much power you added. Like, because like even though like
Yeah.
30 horsepower isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things, it's just, all right, my hard work, because I did a lot of the work on the C30 myself. Like my hard work led to something. And this
Right.
is a tangible thing that I can say, my hard work netted me this much. And the fact that it was such a mystery, and the fact that I actually had to take it back, not to the Volvo guys, who just also happened to be like a 10-minute drive from my house, all the way back out to East Rutherford, which is like 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on time of day. And these Subaru guys figured it out. Because not having boost and trying to figure out the boost problem and figuring out why the ECU was freaking out and hearing it from Elevate, like, oh, it's not the tune. I'm like, I'm not saying it is, but this is one of the things I was told to check. And like all this, it just became such a massive pain in the rear end that without question, it's the worst. It trumps the intake, because I only had to do the intake once, and it actually made putting in the intake manifolds easier. It made doing the PCV system easier. It made doing the thermostat easier. So by removing it, it had a knock-on effect of doing other mods. This was just a pain in the ass because it was at the tail end of my horsepower mods, and I just wanted to be done with them, and it just wasn't.
Yeah.
And it was annoying as hell. Real quick, before you ask your next question, yes, Antoine, at some point I do want to go back to Tail of the Dragon. I do want to take the Mustang, and I do hope to survive it.
Next question I have for you actually is something that I thought of. It's actually the next two questions of that is this a good platform for people looking for a relatively cheap hatch for enthusiasts?
Yes.
Why?
Because there's nothing quite like it for the price. They are going up in value now, especially the manuals and things like that. But there aren't many other 220 horsepower manual hot hatchbacks that you can get for around $10,000 or less.
Especially with that noise. With the 5-cylinder noise is a huge
right, and
deal.
it makes a really unique growling noise. I mean, I've heard some Focus STs and even the RS, and say what you will about those cars, man, but some of those exhausts just sound awful. Like worse than some Honda guys, and to whatever Honda guys I just offended, so be it.
Which is saying something.
You know, so it makes a great sound. It's a really good value. You just have to understand that it wasn't designed from factory to be a performance first car. The shifter, the seats, they're not what you'd expect. So you'd have to figure out a way to kind of make them a little more sporty. Seats are easy. Yeah. Find some good buckets. Make sure they fit. Go to town. Shifter, a little more difficult. There are some short throws that were floated around at some point, but nothing I've ever been able to get a concrete. This is a good kit. Right. The other thing is there is an aftermarket for it, but if you're looking for an inexpensive aftermarket, it isn't. A downpipe exhaust tune and a front mount is really all I would do to the car power wise before I start looking into like limited slip diffs if you have a manual, which is I've said it once and I'm probably going to say it in every video coming up. It's the biggest regret of that car. I wish I had done that before I did some other stuff.
And a sort of follow up to that question is, would you recommend a C30 to others looking for one?
Absolutely. Even if you don't intend on modifying them, they're just a good, solid, little unique car. So when you're driving around, people are going to be like, what the hell is that? And you've done nothing to it. It could be bone stock. Most people are not going to really know what it is. And that's kind of a cool feature of it, is that we modify cars, or at least I do, is to make them mine, to make them unique, to make them different, to make them, any schmuck can go out and buy this car in this spec. I want to make sure that when people look at my car, they know it's a little different than that. The C30 almost does that at a factory, which makes it a really cool little car just based on rarity alone. The thing of it is with any Volvo, you're going to pay a bit of a premium on stuff, but that's where sites like FCP Euro become invaluable, where you do an oil change, and then technically speaking, all you have to do is pay shipping the rest of the time you own the car if you're willing to go through the parts ordering process and everything like that. Same for brakes, same for clutches, same for a whole mess of other things on FCP Euro that you really only have to pay for once. So if you do a brake job, the second time you do the brake job, it's half the price. They're, you know,
Right.
the third time you do it, it gets even cheaper. The fourth time you do it, it's even cheaper. It's so on and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
They're not the easiest cars to work on, nor are they the hardest cars to work on. Just ask anyone who's had to change spark plugs in a Subaru. They'll tell you that if you want hard to work on, that's kind of a hard job. But for the price, it's a Volvo, so it's going to be safe.
Do you think you're going to disappoint a lot of people with this decision?
I know I am.
Probably, yeah.
It's the reason I held on to that thing for as long as I did. If there was no community that, let's face it, we kind of helped foster, it would have been sold years ago. It probably would have been sold the same year I bought the Mustang. So I held on to that thing for 2 extra years just out of this sense of, I don't know if you want to call it loyalty to the fan base. There's a part of me that hates the idea of disappointing fans, especially like the fans who were early fans. But what made it a lot easier was the fact that we're going to have 3 Volvos on the channel, and I don't have to necessarily own one of them.
True. I think that's an
s-
excellent point. You don't, I have said in the past, and I believe this is true. For the rest of my life, I will always own a Volvo, and it has to do with the safety. It has to do with the community. It has to do with something you hit on. A lot of people just don't expect Volvos, and sort of give them a second look. Like if they see a cool one, like I've gotten a lot of looks in this. My old V70R, people are like, "Oh, what is that?" It's like it's cool. The same thing with the C30. You get that extra look, and not necessarily in a vain sort of way. Like, well, I want that extra look. It's more of just like a really cool conversation starter. Like, oh, I thought Volvos were just these safe things, and then you can have a conversation like, they took like a wagon racing back in the 90s, like with the British touring cars. Like that's a cool story. And they just have an interesting heritage that a lot of people don't know of outside of commuter cars and safety, which I think is cool. So to me, that's a big selling point. And that's why I will always, own one. To that point, like everyone else on Shipping Lanes doesn't necessarily have to have one. So that way we can always have Volvo content for people that do want to watch that. But, we hope that more people still come back for us and the cars we do own in the future, even if it's only one Volvo on channel with me owning it, in the future or whatever, that you come back for us and the cool things we do with other cars, not necessarily just Volvo stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And would have been a much harder decision if, like, let's just say you had sold the V70R, I had sold, and I was about to sell the C30 and stuff. Like, those were the foundations on which you could say this channel was built.
Yeah.
So it was tough, especially when you see both of them go. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was just time because I wasn't driving it. I want 4-wheel drive body on frame for my next vehicle.
Mhm.
Just I just want that because frankly, if it was just all wheel drive, crossovers aren't interesting. I don't care how like you could try really really hard to make a Honda CRV a zombie apocalypse. It just doesn't do it for me. It was time, and I got a decent enough offer. It was a little more than I said I'd been willing to, because I got to a point where I would have let this thing walk away for not a lot of money just to make it. I don't have to pay insurance on you anymore. Go away, sort of a thing. So, real quick,
Yeah.
just touch on a couple things. Couple things to chat. Antoine, would I take a C30, a Jetta, or an RS3 5-cylinder? The RS3. That is just. It sounds like a miniature V10 in mono, not stereo, if that makes any sense. V10, remove a block, you don't have. At any rate, RS3 sounds really good. And then Doug, yes, everybody does forget about the C70 in the P1 platform. I do forget about it a lot just because it's weird to me. It's like, wait a minute, this 2-door, but right. But yeah, the C70, it is forgotten. It's always been a goofball in my opinion, but that's kind of why people like Volvo in some respects, is because they are kind of
Yeah.
goofy.
I guess the last question, which you've hinted on a couple times, is like why you sold it. But I guess a better question is, what was the one thing that sort of made you, or like, what was the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will, that made you sell it?
it was about a year before I actually did pull the trigger. It really was centering around the caster issue. And then again, this shop that will remain nameless, who were supposed to be experts on these cars, was just like, take it to an alignment shop. And literally everyone else I talked to, Rich Forsyth being one of them, if you're in the P1 crowd and you don't know who that is, find out. The man is an encyclopedia of knowledge and is one of the best car dudes I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. Just his willingness to help people alone is mind blowing. So, but a lot of people were sitting there like, nah, that ain't right. And we did eventually start the process of looking into fixing it. When I was like, I'm selling this just to see if we could get top dollar for it. But the fact that I was having to run around and deal with this issue that I just didn't want to deal with anymore, it was taking money away from the build I actually wanted to do. It was just frustrating. And anyone who's had like a constant problem, I mean, I'm sure Steve's Jeep, not to be a dick, but I'm sure you've hit points with that car like, oh, not this again, or why can't I figure this out, or what is this issue? I couldn't figure it out. I had experts telling me two different things. The expert I believed was saying this. I replaced the subframe in the thing, and it still didn't really fix the issue. Like, I was done. At that point, I'm like, I am no longer throwing money at an empty hole with this car when I can be throwing it at something like, say, the Mustang or say a truck. It just became such a headache for me, and it was one of those things where part of the reason I never drove it is like, out of sight, out of mind. I don't really own that car until the insurance bill comes, but it's not like it was crazy expensive to insure.
You could sort of sum it up where it was, you got so frustrated with the car that it wasn't even worth putting any effort into at that point, because you had already moved on. You had the Mustang, and it was no disrespect to the platform or the C30 or P1 community. It was more of just like, I've owned this car for 2-3 years now, and I need to, like, wet my palate for something else.
Yeah.
Enter the Mustang.
Exactly. Here's where I will be perfectly honest, perfectly blunt. I got the C30 as something. I got the C30 because it was basically a European Ford Focus underneath, and I liked the nostalgia of going back to my quote first car. And but a lot of the driving force behind it was, what's the funnest Volvo I can find to see if we can continue capitalizing on this market that we sort of stumbled into. And that just happened to be the C30. I really enjoyed the car. It was a lot of fun. It's a cool platform. I'm really proud of the work I put into it. But there was never really a deep need or a deep love for that car. Like, the Mustang, I mean, you want it, you're going to have to come fight me for it. That's just the end of it. And like I said, with the C30, the last bit of it on channel, you saw the boost leak. Then there was the issue with the caster. And don't get me wrong, the caster is a pretty easy fix. And it was just starting to be like, I don't want to throw money at this anymore. I want something epic. And for all the C30 is, regardless of if it's Rich Forsyth's car or whatever I can't remember the name of it, but the car he's currently or has been working on in his shop, which was an all-wheel drive 600 plus horsepower, that sounds epic, but the car itself will never be epic, if you know what I mean. Like a Mustang with 700 horsepower at the wheels, manual box, just the body work I'm going to be doing it, the amount of carbon fiber that I'm going to be putting on it, that is epic to me, more so than the max level, max form. And not for nothing, two people had already done that to the C30. I didn't really want to do it again.
Go with your passion. And your passion wasn't the C30, your passion was a Mustang. Flat out.
Yeah, and just to Antoine's point, whether you're building and modifying or keeping a vehicle bone stock, there's only so much you're going to take until you have reached your breaking point and don't want nothing to do with a certain car from a certain brand ever again. Let me be perfectly clear. The C30 never soured me from Volvo. I would, if there is a build out there that I'm like, I dig it and I can afford to do it the way I want to do it, I'll absolutely get into Volvo again. 100%. It's not like me and BMW, where the M3 I had really soured me to the brand as a whole. It's nothing like that. I would do another Volvo. I would love to play around with that 5-cylinder out of the C30 and build it like the S2000 touring car to get a 350, 370 horsepower, naturally aspirated, small displacement, high revving engine that howls at the moon. I would love to play around with something like that. It's just, that's a $10,000 engine build. It's not even talking about the rest of the car. And we are at Shifting Lanes at a point where when I eventually do the body modifications to the Mustang, there's only a couple little things that I could pick at, but then I'll be freed up to do another project. And I'm not saying specifically it will be a Volvo. I'm not saying it won't be. But like I said, the next vehicle I want to get is a truck. And one, because we've never done a truck on the channel, and I think it'd be kind of cool. Number two, it's just I need a 2-car garage. I need my good condition car with a shit ton of horsepower, and I need a pretty awesome off-roader. Not that I off-road a lot, but I just want to be able to look outside and be like, to hell with this. I don't care if it's snowing. Let's go to work. And that sort of thing.
I think that it's all summed up by Doug's comment, quite frankly, which is a perfect way to end it. Nothing wrong with getting to the end of a build arc. And that's exactly what it is. You owned the car, you thought it was cool, you did some modifications to it, it sat, you sort of moved on from it a little bit, and you know what? This is sort of the end of the character arc. You know, it's the character that's going away in season 3. This is, you know, sort of thing. Yeah. And that's sort of the way the C30 is. Now, to that point, like, I, in the future, would love to own a C30 and do a build on that. Because, again, I'm a Volvo guy. So I think that would be a really cool thing for me to do in the next couple of years. God forbid we make it larger on YouTube and this whole shorts and reels thing sort of blows up and we have more money to throw around at fun projects. Like, I would love to own as many Volvo fun cars as I can, you know, C30 and really, you know, do that 600 horsepower kind of build or recreate an actual Polestar concept that was made by Volvo. That would be a really cool build to me. You know, redo the V70R that I had, or even buy that back if I could find it. You know, I know the owner that has it now, but if he decides to sell it, you know, tracking that down, but rebuying that back. Things like that would be cool to me to do. A C30 being in those plans. There's a lot of plans down the road, and hopefully all of these things sort of pan out in our favor where we can bring you guys content like that. And that's sort of where my head's at, to bring you guys content that you actually want to watch, as opposed to just being like, nope, Volvo's the end all be all, because it's not. It's a great car company. They have cool cars. I'll always own one. But at the end of the day, there's lots of other stuff we want to do. Getting to the end of a build arc, you're right. There's literally nothing wrong with that. And that's what all of the big car YouTubers do. You know, like, most people don't follow B is for Build or Tavares just because they built, you know, the Mustang or the McLaren or the Supra or, you know, the M5 powered, you know, 240. They come for the people, and hopefully, you know, over the years, like, you guys will come back for us and the fun things we do as opposed to just the vehicles.
Exactly. Well said.